Hi everyone, today I am going to discuss about Spring Boot with JUnit test case. So how to create a JUnit test cases in a Spring Boot application. So before that one, please subscribe my channel. Okay, so let's start how to create a JUnit test cases in a Spring Boot application. So here I have a simple Spring Boot application which is having controller, service class and repository, and which is working with user data. Okay, so which is having the Spring Boot application is working on CRUD operations to find the user's data, to update the user's data, to delete the user's data. Okay, so so let me, I have created a application already, Spring Boot application. Let me take you through all these. Okay, so let me take you through pom.xml first. So I am using Spring Boot 2.4.5 version, and it is having a data JPA, Spring Boot starter data JPA for connecting with database using a JPA repository, and Spring Boot starter web, which is for web application. Here I have controller. Okay, so RESTful service, dev tools. So this is for auto deploying the application at runtime. I am using here S2 database. Okay, so Lombok is there. Lombok is uh, you know uh, which is for like getter setter methods, runtime, I mean in all the models. Okay, Spring Boot starter, which comes by default when you create a Spring Boot application. So I am excluding JUnit vintage. I am adding a JUnit dependency here, and this is the Maven plugin. Okay, so let me take you through all the components I have here. First one is main application. So here I don't have, we using this one we start the application. So let's go to controller. User controller is a class where I have created a multiple operations like finding all the users, finding the user by ID and saving the user details, deleting the user by ID, updating the user. Okay, so it is calling a user service to get the user details. Let's take you through this method. This is the interface which has all the methods. So this is the user service IMPL class, is a implementation class of user service. So FindAll method here, which is calling a repository. Repository is having a FindAll. It's a inbuilt method in the, this is the user repository. I am extending a JPA repository, and for the entity class user. Okay, so user entity class having ID, string alias and name. These are the three fields I am using here in the user entity class. Okay, so ID is generated, okay, automatically. So this is the user repository I am created for this user entity. Okay, so I am calling user repository to find all the users. So it will give list of users. this is the find id method. I am using calling user repository find by id. I am passing id. Okay. So I have created all the methods CRUD with the CRUD operations. Okay. Once I call the user service, I am getting the list of users. So I am mapping the list of users into user DTO. I am returning user DTO. Okay. So for that one I am using a user mapper. Let me take you through user mapper. For all methods mapping, I have created a separate mapping, that is like from user to user DTO. Okay. User request to user, like this I have created. Okay. I will add this link of a GitHub where I am committing my code, so you can go through this code later. So I will show you how to create a JUnit test case. So this is the user. I have shown you service, repository and model, everything, right? So how to write a test case, JUnit test case. So by default it is having a this class. Okay. Spring Boot application test, which is annotated with Spring Boot test. Okay. So I have created a package com.example.demo.controller. Here I am created a test class called user controller MVC test. So this is for test cases written for all the methods in the controller level. We are going to write these test cases. Okay. So I have already written all the possible test cases. I will explain you how to create a test cases at controller level. Okay. So this is the class which should have annotations run with spring runner dot class, and since we are calling a controller method through a URL, so we should have a MVC dependency. So for that one, web MVC test annotation we have to add. Okay. So this is only required for controller level. In service or repository, this is not required. Okay. So first method, okay, so I will take you through this one. So here we have to auto-wire mock MVC. So this is for mocking the particular method to call that particular method using a mock MVC. We have to call, suppose we are calling a get users, right? So get all the users, find all users. Here I am using that one. This is the main dependency, whatever we are going to use. So mock bean, we are calling a user service and user mapper in the controller, right? So you have seen. Let me take you through controller. So let's say this is the method find all. So here I am using a user service and user mapper. So user service is calling find all method to get all the users. User mapper is mapping all these users to user DTO. Okay. In this method, for this method we are writing a JUnit test case. Okay. That is what I am showing here. For that one, this is the method, test case method have written. So we have to create a mock for this user service and user mapper, right? So we are using a mock bean. So there is another annotation called mock. why we are using mock bean, I will tell you. See, this is associated with, if you can see here, mock bean, this is associated with Spring Boot framework. It means it is associated with Spring Boot application context, Spring context. So that is why all the Spring beans we are associated to a controller are being used in the controller. For that one we use mock bean. This is the common way to use a create a mock for particular dependency, whatever service class, whatever class you are using. For that one, if you want to create a mock, so in the controller we use mock bean, as these are associated to Spring Boot application context. Okay, so for that one, wherever in the controller, whichever, suppose you are using any other service class, any other class, so to mock those class, mock those beans, whatever beans associated to Spring application context, so we use mock bean. Okay, so first method I have created should find all the users, return 200 normal use case. This is the normal case where it is returning a 200 as a success response to find all the users. Okay, so first I will take you through this one. Okay, we are using a mock MVC, mock MVC dot perform. It is calling a get method. I am passing a URL. What is the URL? /users is the URL in the controller. Okay, so you can see the path, request mapping path, URL /users. Here we are not passing anything for FindAll method, right? So I have to use this URL /users. I am passing the URL, and content type I am passing media type as applications JSON. Okay, so it is expecting it is expecting status as a OK. Since it should be success, then status should be OK, and I am expecting content as a JSON. So expected JSON should be user DTO, right? In the user controller you can see user DTO is a list of users which is containing user DTO. Let us go to user DTO. So user DTO is having a list of user DTO. This the variable. Okay, so each user DTO is having 3 parameters, that is ID, name, alias. Okay, okay, so let's go to okay. Here if you can see here line number 55, so it is giving given user object. User object I have created here. I am setting ID, name, alias. ID, name, alias I have declared here. So ID as a 1, alias as a alias, name as a name. Okay, I am creating a simple mock object for user. So I am creating a list of users. Since we are finding all the users, it should give list of users, right? So for the testing purpose here, I am creating a collection of singleton list. So using this this user object, it gives a list of users, and so I am mocking user service dot find, when it calls the user service dot find method, FindAll method, it has to return list of users. Okay. So let me take you through Go controller, right. So what it, when request comes to FindAll, right. So what it will do, it will call a user service dot FindAll method. Okay. So it will return a list of users. This is the first line of code. Okay. After that, it uses the list of users and using a mapper, it maps all the users into list of user DTO. So this is the method in the user mapper. I am using a list of users, I am mapping it to users DTO. It is returning list of user DTO. So these are the two lines of code we have written in a controller, right. Same thing we have to mock this object. So to mock the user service, so I am using a Mockito, that is here you can see here okay, org dot Mockito dot when, this is the Mockito to mock particular data. So I have to mock this user data, right. So when user service calls FindAll method, I have to mock the list of user data. So I am already created list of user data here. So I am then returning same here when user service FindAll method is called. This is how we mock the data. So let so once user data is written, when user service FindAll method is called, right. So same thing is passed to user mapper, right. So it is using users, when here also we have to mock users DTO data. Okay. So I have created a user DTO here, simple user DTO, that is having ID, name, alias, and it is creating a list of collection of list of users DTO. Then I have to return user DTO at the end. Okay. So when user mapper dot map by passing users list of users, so it has to return user DTO. That is what I am mocking here. That is I am using mock when particular user mapper dot map is called and users are passed, list of users are passed, it has to return list of users. So I am mocking the user DTO data here when user mapper dot map called. Okay. Finally we have a list of user DTO in the response. So I am creating a one object called user DTO. So user DTO is having a list of user DTOs, right. I am passing whatever list of user DTOs returned by user mapper into user DTO object, and I am expecting the same object returned by the controller. So I am using a JSON helper converting this user DTO object into a JSON in the string format. So same thing we expect when we call a FindAll method in the controller, right. So I am taking through this JSON helper. So here I am creating a object mapper class. I am using a object mapper dot write as value as a string. Okay, I am passing whatever the user DTO object here, it will convert that object into string JSON format. Okay, so that is what it returns. So you can use object mapper to convert particular object into string JSON format. So the write value string, it will convert that particular object into string JSON format. So finally I got the user DTO object, list of user DTOs in the JSON format that is expected. So I am comparing here, that is content.json expected I am passing here. Okay. So it will return whatever, it will check whatever expected data we are expecting in this method, right. So it will check whether that expected data is same as this or not. Okay. So it is returning list of user DTO, right, in the controller, and same thing we are expecting here. This is one test case for finding all the users. So I have written another test case finding the all users by user ID. Okay. So here let me take you through user controller. So this is the method. Here I am passing a path variable as a ID. Okay, that particular user ID. So I am calling a user service find by ID. I am passing that find by ID, that particular ID, to get the particular user. Okay. Finally it maps the user to return a user DTO object. Okay. So we have to mock two things. One thing is, when user service call find by ID, it should return user object, right. So user object, whatever user entity we have, right. So this should be returned when user service calls find by ID. So I have to mock this one, and I have to mock this one when using this user entity as a input. This return user DTO. Okay. So user DTO should be written as a mock data when I call this find by ID. Okay. So that is what I have written, created a test case here. So here I am using a mock MVC perform get. It is a get method. I am passing a URL and ID. So content type is media application JSON, and I am expecting a status as a OK, and I am expecting the content should be whatever return should be expected. What is expected? The expected is simple user DTO for that particular user, right. So here I am mocking that data using a mockito. When particular user service with the find by ID method is called, I am passing a ID whatever we are passing in the URL path variable. So it should return a user. Okay. So I have created that user data here. The same thing method, it is a mock data. Here I am setting ID, alias name, set 3 variables. So it is returning that user. So once user is returned for particular ID, user mapper is using that as a input, and it has to return a user DTO object, right. So I am mocking same object here using a given user DTO. Same, I am setting same thing here. Okay, so you just have to learn mocking the data when particular operation is called. So we have to mock the user DTO object when user mapper dot map is called. So I am just comparing expected with the content whatever return from that particular method. Okay. So same thing I have written for all the methods. There is no difference at all. I am using a Mockito to create a mop object. The object I am creating here in the control this test class. So for all the mock data I have created a separate method. So for that one I have used same those methods here to create a mock data, and mock data is written when particular user service or user mapper class is called. Okay, and expected is whatever user method is returning, I am just converting into JSON format, and finally I am expecting same thing and comparing. Okay, this is how we can create a controller level JUnit test cases. So here I have created another test class, that is user service level. So in the service level I am using only one annotation, Spring Boot @Spring Boot test. Okay. So in the service level we have methods called for all, like FindAll, find by ID, same all those same methods, save, find by user ID, delete, all update, everything are there. So JUnit is like particular unit of method is being tested using a JUnit test case. Okay, find by all, in this find all method in the user service, find all method user service, we are calling a find all method of user repository, right? We have to mock the particular. What is mocking? Mocking is like when here user repository is calling find all method, right? So in actual it will not call this find all method to get the data. It is just like mocking, mimicking something, some operation. It will just when this particular is called, the data has to be written, right? In actual the data will not be written, since there is no database connection and all, right? So we are just creating a unit test cases to to check particular method whether it is covering all the lines of code and it is working as expected or not, just to make sure like there is no issue in that method. Okay, to code coverage purpose, you can say code coverage, it is whether it is covering particular test case is covering all the lines of code or not. Okay, so for that one we have to create a mock object. So for this user repository we have to create a mock object and return the mock data when particular method is called. Here user repository is calling find all, so it has to return a list of users, right? So list of users data we have to mock. you have to create our own data and return, right? So that is called mocking. So here if you can see here, I am using user service IMPL. For that service I am creating a test cases here. So for that one you have to inject that mock object, that is using inject mock. Suppose you are creating some, suppose like some other service, product service. So to create all the test case for product service, right, you have to inject that particular mock object to call all the methods in that particular service. It is mock object is like you need an instance of that particular object, right, service. So user service IMPL we need an instance object, right. So to call all the methods in that particular service, so for that one we use a inject mock. It creates a instance a bean of a this class, particular class, and it injects those all beans, it or method it injects all the instance object to call those methods. Okay, so that is why we use inject mock. Whatever suppose user repository we are using inside user service IMPL, right, whatever classes or objects we are using inside this user service IMPL, for that one we have to create a mock object, right. So for that one we have to use a mock connotation. So this is the dependency org.mockito, which is used to create a mock of a particular object. You have seen already in the user controller we are using a mock bean instead of just mock. So why we are using a mock bean? Because these are attached to Spring application context. Here we are writing a integration test or unit test case, which are all the beans are attached to particular application Spring application context, right. So that is why we use mock bean, that is part of Spring Boot framework. Okay, but in case of service level or any other classes, we use a mock that is or.mockito.mock, this package, to create any mock for particular service particular class. Okay. So let's take you through a particular test case. Okay, so what I am I have to call a FindAll method in the user service, right. So I have already injected the mock object of user service. So same thing I am using here to find all method, right, all the users. So here I am not passing any data since it is not taking any input parameter. Okay, when user service calls the FindAll method, so it is calling a user repository FindAll method to return a list of users. Okay, So same thing, I have to mock the user list of user data when user repository calls FindAll method. Okay. So when user repository dot FindAll then return list of users. Okay. This list of users I am creating a mock object here, mock data, that is called mock data. So it is creating a user, given user is creating a user object, and it is creating this, it is using same user object creating a collection of list of users object. So I am returning same when user repository dot FindAll method is called inside user service IMPL. So I am using a assert equal. So this is asserting the list of users and whatever user service dot FindAll method returning. Okay. So here user service dot FindAll method, it is written list of users, and I am asserting same thing here. Okay. So let us take you through user find ID test case. So here I am calling a user service dot find ID, I am passing a ID. Okay. So ID have hard coded here 1. So inside user dot find ID method, it is calling a user repository dot find ID, passing a find ID. It is returning a optional user user entity. Okay. So if it is data is there, it returns user, otherwise it returns null. Okay. So when user service dot find ID is called, so we have to mock this users list user data, right. So when user repository dot find ID called inside user service, we have to return a user. So that user I am creating here using a given user method. So user method, it is returning a user entity, I am setting ID alias name, 3 things. So this is how we create a test cases, okay, in the service class. So where whatever if you if you want to create for any class, same way we have to create. I have created for all the save method, delete method, all the methods, it is same. The main thing is we have to mock the data. First we have to mock that particular class, whatever object class we are using, we have to mock. Suppose you are using any helper class inside the user service IMPL, you can use mock @mock and you have to create that mock object here. Okay. So whatever object, whatever classes you are using, you have to mock that class. Okay. Mock that class, and whenever that object method is called, you have to return mock data, right. So for that mock data, you can create a method somewhere in the class and give the return the same data. Okay. That is called as a mock data when mocking. So this is how we create a JUnit test case in a service class, controller class. Okay. So I will share this link. I am committing this code in a Bitbucket, so you can download this code and you can use, you can modify also. Okay. So let me run this first. Let me update, do the Maven update. Oh, okay, we have to remove one annotation. Okay, now it is fine. So error is gone. So let's, there are few ways to run the test case, right? So you can use, click on a project, run, and here you can see option JUnit test. So if you click on this one, it will run all the test cases. See here, it ran all 10 test cases. So there are 5 test cases in service class and 5 test cases in controller test class. So all are success. You can, here you can see error, failures, so whatever. Okay. So in class level also you can run test cases. Suppose user service, so I have to run this test case, run JUnit test. So you can see here, it actually ran all the test cases. There are no failures. So better way is like, use this project level, run JUnit test case. So you can use build also, run as Springboard build. So when you build this application, right, so there is an option called, let me show you, run configuration. So Springboard JUnit, here you can see skip test case checkbox. If it is not checked, then it will run all the test cases. If it is checked, it will skip all the test cases. This way also you can run all the test cases. So it is running all the test cases. Okay. You can see here test run 10, failures 0, error 0, skipped 0. So all the test cases are running fine. So this is how you can create a test case, JUnit test case for controller, service, whatever class. So the main thing is you have to create a mock. Let me explain you one more time what is mocking. Okay. So in the controller I am calling a so let me take you through code only. So this is the FindAll method, right? So here I am using user service, user mapper. So we need a object of these two, right, to call methods of those classes. So for that object, so object is, when application run, objects are bean objects are created, right, in the Spring Boot application or Spring application. So using those object, or it is inside a ISV container, objects are created all for all these beans, user mapper, user service. So those using those objects, instance, beans, whatever you can say. So using those things, methods inside those service class or mapper class are called. So in test case we are running those without being instantiated all those objects. We need objects of those classes, right? how how to create those objects? Spring application is not running when we run the test cases, right? So it will not create any object of those classes. We need to create a object for those classes mock using a mock we call it as a mock object, right? So mock mimicking the particular object of particular class is called as a mock object. So using those mock object we can call all the methods inside those services. Okay, we don't really call in run when we run the test cases, right? We just use those mock object to call those methods. Okay, that is using mock annotations. So for the user service you use a mock bean to create a mock object of particular user service class. Okay, so mock of user mapper class. Okay, once we create a mock object, so we are calling methods inside the controller, right? Well, here you can see FindAll method is called using a mock object of user service. So it has to return some data, it has to return list of users, right? In actual it doesn't return list of users. There is no data because it has not connected to database at all in real time, because service is not started at all. We have to mimic those data, we have to return those data, that is called as a mock data. So mock data we are creating here only. So user, I am creating a mock data and creating a list of users as a mock data, okay, for a mock object. So same thing we have to return as a mock data. This is how called mocking the object and mocking the data. So if you have understood, or if you need more clarity, you can comment on my channel in the videos, so I can give you more explanation in coming videos. Okay, thank you so much.